Have you started a carnivore diet recently and you're running into problems? Or perhaps you started a ketogenic diet recently and you've run into problems. After all, carnivore diet is, as is often argued, essentially a expert level keto diet, unless you're consuming large amounts of, say, milk or something with lactose in it that would kick you out of ketosis. But in general, if you've recently started a ketogenic or carnivore diet, you may have run into some problems. It's very common for people new to the diet or returning to the diet after a long, say, bender of eating things you shouldn't eat, having a cheat day that turned into a cheat month. You may be having some problems. And so we're going to go over a total of 5 of these problems today and generally what they can mean. All right, so because your diet, you came back to this diet or you've started this diet because you're trying to get your weight under control, some metabolic issues you have under control, some inflammatory issues. You're trying to get them all under control. So you cannot let simple problems that can be fixed stop you from having success. So the first is cravings. This is the age-old problem. Any diet you go on, you are going to have cravings at some point. Unless you have, in preparation to go low carb, you went on like a pure sugar bender that made your body basically rebel against you. I've heard of that happening. Unless you've done that, you're going to have cravings. Cravings are first and foremost a sign of, when you're doing a keto diet of some kind or another, they're a sign of going through withdrawal from sugar. Sugar is addictive. It gets its hooks into you, and your body wants it badly after a certain amount of time. There are 2 ways to get through this. Your first way to do it is probably not the best way to do it, which is just sort of white knuckle your way through it and don't deviate from the plan. The second way to do it will not sound that different from the first, and that's to basically up the amount of fat and protein you're taking in. Eat more meat, basically, or more eggs, or whatever it is you're eating on your plan, and more than you might normally. I don't agree with the almost consensus advice that you get from people that on a carnivore diet you shouldn't do restricted eating. You shouldn't, restrict the amount of protein and fat you take in, your calories, if you want to call them that you should just eat till you're stuffed. I know from experience that I do not achieve the goals that I need to achieve if I eat till I'm comfortably stuffed, as some call it. In fact, if I do that, not only will I not lose weight, I actually gain weight. That's the story of my 2023 as I was dealing with a tornado that hit my town and damaged my house and a whole bunch of other weird things that happened this year. I gained a lot of weight, and it was facilitated by eating till comfortably stuffed. Unfortunately for me, my metabolism is that broken that I don't have satiety signaling in my system. My body doesn't really let me know when don't need to eat more until I'm really overfull. So I have to restrict. It's not the case for everybody, though. In fact, a lot of people get success following the typical advice. Do what works for you, and you have to figure this out. But to deal with cravings, instead of, if you're restricting yourself to, 1,800 calories per day of protein and fat, up it. That first couple of weeks, don't worry so much about what the scale says, unless you are desperate to lose the weight. Just up the protein, up the fat, and up the salt. And the salt is essential. You have to up the salt. Oftentimes, cravings for one thing are actually a sign that you need something else. Often electrolytes or often salt. So do that. Your second problem you're going to run into, some people run into, is that they find they have trouble eating a large amount of fat if they're not used to doing so already. And you'll often see this with vegans who go carnivore. They're just not used to eating that much animal fat or fat in general. My hat is off to any former vegan who goes from being vegan to carnivore almost without any kind of transition period. That's brave. I don't even want to know what your system goes through when you reintroduce meat, especially after years of not doing any kind of animal products. But some people report they have a problem eating large amounts of fat. So here's what I'm going to suggest. Normally, I am not a fan of drinking your calories. That's usually a great way to consume a lot more fat than you need. But if you're having a problem eating that much fat, take a more relaxed carnivore approach. And by relaxed, I mean have a cup of coffee. You can put in your coffee heavy whipping cream, which will stop weight loss initially for most people. Or you can put butter or ghee if you prefer. And I would suggest if you're going to do that, try butter coffee. There are plenty of people in the comments who drink butter coffee who will happily tell you how to drink butter coffee, how to put the butter in there. and to drink it. And they say it's delicious. I'm not so much a fan of it myself, but a lot of people are. And trust me on this one, drinking your calories is a great way to get all that extra fat in. So try getting it that way. Another way you can do it is to take a piece of butter, your tablespoon of butter, and cut it up and put it on your steak. Fold it into your ground beef once you've cooked your ground beef. Or if you cook your ground beef and you have a lot of the drippings, try pouring that back onto the beef when you put it in your bowl. And then eat it with a spoon. You'll capture a lot of that fat. Try that approach. Some people just eat straight up butter. Again, more power to you. Also look up a good recipe for hollandaise sauce, which is just butter and egg yolks and some sort of emulsifier, usually lemon juice or vinegar. Those are like just a punch of pure, unadulterated fat and super nutritious. Those are great ways to get the fat you need. And they're delicious. And making them delicious will help facilitate eating it. Another one is being fatigued. Part of this is going to just be that transition period. Your body is not used to trying to use fat for all of your energy. You haven't really gotten, fat adapted yet. So you might always be tired. But the simple way to solve this problem is to make sure you're getting your electrolytes. I'm not a fan of supplementing externally, but if you need to, this would be a time for temporarily maybe using a ZMA supplement. It's got zinc, magnesium, and another thing in it. I've used it from time to time. Helps me sleep, actually. But it has some of that bioavailable magnesium. But at a more basic level, there are a whole lot of different electrolyte brands out there. This is not, a paid endorsement from Element. I just use them. Element makes a good one. You can get unflavored, or if you are okay with stevia, you can get some of the flavored ones. There are other brands out there. Or you could just use salt. You won't get a lot of consistent advice about how much salt. They just tell you to put extra salt and do it to taste. That to taste stuff doesn't work for me. I have found that I perform at my best when I'm getting minimum 7,000 milligrams of sodium a day. So what you do is you get yourself a big bag of Redmond's real salt. Sea salt. Don't get white salt from the store. Get actual Redmond's sea salt, or sea salt from a land-based source. And measure multiple teaspoons of it until, according to the bag, you've got 7,000 milligrams of sodium on a plate. And that is what needs to go into your food and into your body every single day. That's what I need. I'm also taller than some people, and at present way more than a lot of people, more than I'd like. And in general, I go to the gym a lot, so I need more sodium than the typical person. If you're not physically active, and if you're not carrying some of the body fat that I am, you might not need as much, but up your salt intake. Fourth one is the one that I sometimes see that can scare people, and that's persistent diarrhea. This can actually be caused by too much fat intake, or that you are intolerant to large amounts of certain foods like eggs. Some people don't realize that they're actually allergic to eggs, and like mildly allergic, and so when they then try to eat like 6 eggs a day, like they see, say, Dr. Sean Baker doing, their body reacts badly to it. So dial back either the fat or the eggs. If you're adding a lot of extra butter, dial some of that back. If you are eating 6 eggs, 10 eggs a day, dial some of that back. Replace it with meat if you need to. That's where you would start. I know from personal experience that as much as I love brisket, I live in barbecue country, I'll put a brisket on the grill once in a while. If I eat too much of the point, that's the fatty end, the delicious fatty end, it will send me to the bathroom. It's because there's just so much fat in it. Even after a 12-hour cook, that renders a lot of it out. There's just so much in there that it makes me ill. So dial the fat back. And finally, depression. Depression is a sign of carbohydrate withdrawal. It may be a sign that you are cutting your sugar out too quickly. This is common for people who are new to carnivore or who went on a multi-month, fell off the wagon and you can't get back on. Every time you try to get back on, you get short-tempered and depressed and things. This is a sign that you may have cut the sugar out too quickly. You can either just hold on tight and work through it, and this stuff will pass, or instead of going carnivore, start by going keto. Dial those carbs down to 20 net carbs a day, with not doing a 1-for-1 with your fiber, because that's not fiber subtraction from the carb total, because that doesn't actually, the math doesn't work. It's more like half a gram of 1 gram of fiber is half a gram of carbs or something at best. And some just say just count your fiber as all your carbs, as just carbohydrates in general, but dial that down. Start dialing that down slowly. Wean yourself off, because you probably have a severe, you're severely hooked on sugar and you need to get that stuff out of your system. I have been there. That one I know very, very well. I know that one so well that I will never forget what that felt like. And it's just, sugar has its hooks in you, but I promise you it will pass. But you either just have to hold tight and go through it, or be keto and slowly wean yourself off before going full carnivore. This is why most of the nutritionists and doctors in the space will tell you that if you are coming in from the standard Western diet of some kind or another and you're trying to lose the weight, it's best to dial the carbs down from standard down to low carb, down to keto, to hyper carnivore, down to pure carnivore, and do it slowly over the course of maybe months. It's the best way for your mental health, I think. What other troubles can you think of people might have starting a carnivore diet? Aside from budget, I'll cover budget later this week. Let me know in the comments what you think some of those troubles are people might have and how to overcome them. Let me know in the comments what you thought of all this. Like and subscribe if you haven't. It certainly does help. So does sharing this on social media. That helps too. I'm Anthony Stine, the Practical Carnivore, and thanks for your time today.